Sauce the boss in the building. Sauce the boss.
Sauce the boss, yo, Sauce the boss, of course. Shout out to Sauce the boss, of course, man. Who's in the building, man? Shout out to Sauce the boss, of course, man. Who's in the
Crabbe in the Harry Potter films. Although for many actors this would be a dream come true to be in such well-known films, Jamie reportedly struggled with the fame. He began to use substances in order to cope with his mental health struggles. In 2012, London saw some of the most devastating riots, including looting and arson, as well as the deaths of 5 people. Jamie was arrested for being involved in the riots. He was pictured getting involved in looting and holding a bottle full of petrol. He was also with a gang of at least 4 people who went into Chalk Farm on the 8th of August. He also had a previous conviction for substance possession at that time. In 2012, he received a 2-year sentence for violent disorder and 12 months for handling stolen goods. It's believed that since being released from prison, he hasn't been in any big films.
These are videos that will give you new fears, part 1. The video I'm about to show you shows a Malaysian man getting stuck inside of a water slide. He came to an abrupt stop twice, which made him call out for help and start to panic. Just imagine this happening to you, and here's the video. So yeah, I could never imagine getting stuck in a water slide like this, and my claustrophobia would be going crazy. I honestly never want to go on a water slide again after seeing this video.
You obviously know what Benadryl is, right? So back in like 2020, there was a where you have to take a certain amount, like a dozen or more, to hallucinate. I don't recommend anybody to like obviously go do it. I'm not saying to go do it, but I'm just saying like people that would hallucinate on Benadryl, it would be bad trips overall. Like they would see spiders, they would see snakes, wasps attacking them. They would hear like familiar voices and unfamiliar voices talking to them, and they would see shadowy figures, and they will also see the Hat Man. Have you ever heard about the Hat Man?
The Hat Man, no.
It's a sleep paralysis demon. So people around the world has seen this mother for like years, bro. Websites dedicated to this, like people talking about their stories, stuff like that. Everybody would describe them the same way too, like a tall 6 to 8 foot
shit,
person.
bro. 6
he
to
wears
8
a
foot.
fedora. You can't really see his face, only like 2 red eyes, and it's always like he's a shadowy figure.
And I remember a supporter actually talking about how they had sleep paralysis and they saw,
they
saw a man with a hat outside of the window, bro. And keep in mind the window is like mad fucking tall.
So I do remember seeing a story about a therapist who had like a patient, and he would always say that he would.
This Loki made me even more scared because he was just talking about like a shadow person holding up the fucking curtain.
Did you know that Gino D'Acampo actually served time in prison? Many people in the UK absolutely love Gino, who is well known for appearing on daytime television. However, many people don't know that he does have a criminal past. This true crime case honestly reads like a bizarre fan fiction. In 1998, way before he ever appeared on ITV's This Morning, Gino was 21 years old. He was an unknown waiter living in North London. He broke into the home of well-known 80s singer Paul Young. He was known for having hits such as Wherever I Lay My Hat. Gino stole Paul's guitar collection, which was reportedly worth around £4,000. He also stole his platinum disc. Police investigating the crime found that Gino had actually unknowingly left his DNA at the crime scene. He dropped a cigarette butt with his DNA on it. They were able to match this DNA to Gino, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Gino actually reached out to Paul personally to apologize to him just prior to entering the I'm a Celebrity jungle back in 2009. Gino stated that he was involved with the wrong people back then and was on the wrong path.
These are videos you can never watch. not sleeping tonight.
This woman was relaxing on a Royal Caribbean cruise trip, and then she disappeared without a trace a minute later to never be seen again. Or so we thought. The woman behind me is Amy Bradley. Her father was Ron Bradley, and he was observing her just hanging out and sleeping on the cruise. This is around 5:30 a.m. Then all of a sudden, he looked back again, and she was gone. The father notified everyone on the ship and the authorities immediately. There was a 4-day search for her all over the coast, and there was no trace of her anywhere. Some people suspected that she may have fallen off of the ship, drowned or something like that, or she got swept away by the tide. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. An officer in the U.S. Navy visited a brothel in Barbados and found a woman there claiming to be Amy Bradley. She was begging him to help, saying that she could not leave the brothel because she wasn't allowed to. So now the question is, was Amy Bradley trafficked? And how did that even happen on a cruise ship? Now here's the even sadder part. The U.S. Navy officer didn't even report this at the time. He waited until he was retired because he thought he would get in trouble going to a brothel. So the family didn't find out until way later when he finally came forward. And by that time, the brothel was long gone. However, the family did get a mysterious email from a woman claiming to be Amy, and apparently they stumbled upon an SW website where they saw her. These were like listings, so unfortunately, their daughter was definitely trafficked. This just makes me realize how horrible this world is, how scary it can be. Stay safe out there, guys. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This girl killed her mum so that she wouldn't find out she got kicked out of school. On the 3rd of March 2020, police were called to do a welfare check at a property in Ohio. Brenda Powell lived in the house, the 50-year-old mother of Sydney Powell. Brenda had actually been on the phone with Sydney's former school. This was the University of Mount Union. Now, during the telephone call, a staff member heard repeated thuds and screaming, so authorities were alerted. Inside, they found Brenda Powell in a serious condition. She was rushed to hospital but died from her injuries. Brenda had been unaware that her 19-year-old daughter had been kicked out of the school. During her telephone conversation, Brenda was struck in the head and then stabbed nearly 30 times by Sydney. However, when police investigated the murder, Sydney tried to claim that there had been a break-in. She told them that there had been a noise and her mum had instructed her to run away. She said she heard screaming, and when she ran back in, her mum was on the floor. Investigators saw through her lies and she eventually changed her story. At her trial, she pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Her defense argued that Sydney was suffering from undiagnosed schizophrenia. They stated that she killed while experiencing a psychotic episode. However, it is rare for people with schizophrenia to act violently. It was concluded that Sydney had been exaggerating her symptoms. She's recently been found guilty and is awaiting sentencing.
This is proof we aren't alone. Okay, so this alien-looking creature was recently captured on video, and it literally shapeshifts and it's glowing all these crazy colors. Is this beautiful or terrifying? Here's the video. So yeah, what do you think about this? I have no idea what this is, but it's absolutely terrifying. And this is also 4,000 feet in the ocean.
So I'm randomly scrolling on TikTok and I found this post claiming that they found the Malaysian aircraft that crashed 10 years ago, MH370 to be exact. And I was like, wait, pause. There's no way it's that intact after that many years. So I went to Google it, and of course, it's fake. This video did have a ton of views and likes though, 826,000 likes. But if we look closer at this video, this looks very AI generated. Like they definitely typed in like Malaysian flight MH370 crashed, retro filter, or something like that. I feel like dropping from an altitude and hitting the ocean from that high, you know, it feels like concrete after 40 feet. The plane would be shredded and torn apart. But I did find an article that Malaysia did authorize a new hunt for the aircraft. They're getting help from a robotics company. They might be using sonar and other things to try to help and find the plane's location. But it still remains a mystery today how this plane even vanished. And honestly, where did this plane even go? I don't think they found any debris from the crash site, did they? And this felt like it happened yesterday, literally 10 years ago. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Will they ever find this plane? Let me know what you guys think. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This man shot his colleague's boyfriend after she rejected him. 37-year-old Kevin Prasad worked with Thandar Sian at San Francisco International Airport. The pair had been working together for years, and multiple times Kevin had asked Thandar out on dates. She always rejected his advances. She was happily in a relationship with 31-year-old Mark Mangakat. The pair even had a 3-year-old daughter and soon planned to move to Vegas. Despite his interest in his girlfriend, Kevin never actually had an argument or a disagreement with Mark. There were no warning signs for what was to come. On the 25th of April 2018, Mark went to the airport to pick his girlfriend up from work. Little did he know he was being followed. Kevin had hatched a murderous plan to stop his crush moving away with her boyfriend. Kevin and an alleged accomplice, Donovan Rivera, followed the pair home that day. As Mark was reversing his car into the garage, Kevin fired shots into the car. This killed Mark, and it is a miracle that no bullets hit Thandar. The killer fled the scene, and Thandar hadn't spotted that it was actually her work colleague. When investigators quizzed her about any potential enemies that Mark may have had, she mentioned Kevin almost as an afterthought. She said, "There is a fellow at work who has an interest in me, but he would never do that." A jury recently found Kevin guilty of murder, and he will be sentenced in November.
These are videos humans were never meant to see. Okay, so we all know how the Titanic sank and snapped in half. But have you ever wondered what it looked and sounded like? If so, the video I'm about to show you is a pretty accurate description of what it looked and sounded like at the moment the Titanic snapped in half and sank. A survivor also said that they can't even go to baseball games anymore because it reminds them of all the screams the night of the Titanic. Here's the video, and it's pretty disturbing. So yeah, that video is absolutely disturbing. Just imagine being there while the Titanic's sinking in the middle of the ocean at night. It's something straight out of your nightmares.
According to reports I found online, George Mubayed, who ran the account Hairzone 700, has recently been arrested for being a pedophile. There are a bunch of sources you can go to find this information online, but this is one of them. So according to these articles and these investigations, George was using his TikTok account to lure minors into his shop. And this was a ring. He was one of the heads of the ring. According to the reports, there were other members that were on TikTok that would actively work to get children into the shop. And they would all then participate in grapes against the children, which would be recorded, filmed, photos would be taken, and these photos would then be sold and posted on the dark web for other pedophiles to enjoy. Now, I did notice that the Hairzone 700 TikTok account is gone, which I thought was strange because it had 700,000 followers. So there has to be some truth to all of this. But they do have a Facebook page. I don't know if this is something new or what. And disturbingly, there are photos and videos that are being posted. This one was just posted 2 or 3 days ago, showing the accused man with a bunch of different children. Now, I don't know if these are re-uploads of content or what's going on with all of this, but these are really serious, staggering, disturbing accusations. And it does make sense. I mean, these videos are goofy, they're humorous, they're engineered to entertain children. So I'm going to keep you guys updated on this situation because if you go read the articles, it's especially disturbing. And yeah, I'm going to keep on top of this.
This teenager killed his ex-girlfriend for a free cooked breakfast. Back in 2010, 15-year-old Joshua Davis was in a relationship with Becca Aylward. The pair were the same age and they both went to Bridgend High School in Wales. Rebecca, who was known to her friends as Becca, had dreams of one day becoming a barrister. Upsettingly, throughout the relationship, the schoolboy had been aggressive and controlling with Becca. He'd even sent texts to his friends bragging that one day he might kill her. On one occasion, one of Joshua's friends replied saying that if he did so, he would buy him a cooked breakfast. Chillingly, Joshua would later say to his friend, "Don't say anything, but you may just owe me." In October 2010, despite the pair having broken up, Joshua told Rebecca he wanted to meet her at a local woods. Alarm bells rang for Rebecca's family when she failed to return home that day. No one knew that she had been lured to the woods by Joshua for him to kill her. He had beaten her to death with a rock. Her body was discovered the following day at 9 a.m. face down on the ground. The same day that Joshua had killed Rebecca, he sent text to her phone to make it look like he was concerned about her. However, the truth did eventually emerge. Thankfully, Rebecca's parents knew that it was Joshua she was intending on meeting, so police investigated him. They confiscated his phone, and the evidence on the phone was enough to arrest him. Joshua and his friends tried to blame each other for the killing, but he was finally found guilty of the hideous crime. Shockingly, he only got 14 years in prison, and the 14 years is nearly up.
This doctor in Kansas was recently charged with an incredibly disturbing crime. Meet Brian Albers. Brian is a pediatric neurologist in Kansas City, Missouri. Before his arrest, this is where he worked, at the Overland Park Medical Center. In doing some research for this TikTok, I saw a number of photos of Brian working closely with children. It's pretty disturbing to see him in these circumstances, given what I'm about to tell you. Well, on November 15th, 2023, Brian was charged in federal court on CP or CSAM charges. Allegedly, Brian had been recording children with hidden cameras. The police also discovered text messages that Brian had sent that read, "I'm going to jail. I'm going to lose my license. I do not want to die. I do not want my kids to see me dead." According to the person who actually reported this crime, they were asked by Brian themselves to head to the hospital to retrieve his electronics. Brian then asked the person to destroy these electronics because they contained, quote, "bad stuff." Upon searching these devices, the authorities discovered something disturbing. They discovered over 1,006 explicit videos. Brian had been recording videos of his young patients using hidden cameras from December of 2020 all the way up until October of 2023. And yeah, you heard me say that right. He had over 1,000 videos on his devices. I think that makes these news reports that are still online that feature Brian interacting with children all the more disturbing. So Brian was taken into custody on November 16th, and the FBI is now actively asking people to provide any information they have about him. And I don't think the future looks too bright for Brian.
This woman murdered a teenager because it was on her bucket list. It was 2016, and Gemma Lilly was 26 years old. She was obsessed with serial killers, and she'd emigrated to Australia 6 years earlier, back in 2010. She was originally from Lincolnshire and had a troubled upbringing. Her fascination with crime and horror was a dark one, and disturbingly, she even put murdering someone on her bucket list. Her housemate was 44-year-old Trudy Lennon. She was actually introduced by a mutual friend to Trudy. Trudy had been struggling financially and actually had 2 children to feed, so the pair decided to live together in order to share bills. At this point, the women started sharing disturbing fantasies about killing someone. Some of these were even documented in the online chats that the pair had. They used the code names SOS and Corvina. Within the space of just 3 weeks living together, the pair hatched a sickening plan. Terrifyingly, in the days leading up to the plan, the pair bought a circular saw, bleach, cement, a drop sheet, a large plastic barrel, and some acetone. Trudy identified their victim. Aaron Page was friends with one of Trudy's sons, and she decided they would lure him to the flat. They used the excuse of needing Aaron to come and install some games onto their computers. As he obliged, Gemma came up behind him and strangled him with a wire. She then stabbed him 3 times. They buried him in a shallow grave and attempted to cover it with concrete. Aaron was reported missing on the 14th of June after failing to return home. It was on the 20th of June that police were able to track Aaron's last call to Gemma's phone, which led them to investigate her. They searched the property and found Aaron's body along with the knife and the saw. Police even found CCTV evidence from Gemma's own CCTV camera. In 2018, both women were sentenced to life with a minimum term of 28 years.
The German pedophile campsite is one of the most disturbing stories I've ever researched. A pedophile ring was operating at a campsite in Germany from 1998 to 2018. What was happening was a group of men was luring children to this campsite. Disturbingly, the kids' ages ranged from 3 years old to 14 years old. And once they were at this campsite, the cameras were turned on and the children were violently sexually assaulted. All on video. Once the kids were there, they were promised laptops, horseback riding lessons, bicycles if they complied with the abuse. And sadly, for 2 decades, nobody listened to these children. Some of the kids' parents even tried to go to authorities, but they never looked into this seriously. This disgusting group of men lured a group of underage boys at one point to a garden shed, and they then kept them locked up in there with no food or water for days. And these men would take turns going into the shed and assaulting each child one by one on camera. This footage was eventually uploaded to the dark web, and hundreds, thousands of pedophiles across the world clicked on this, downloaded this, and saved this to their sick collections. So like I said, this was a hardcore pedophile ring being operated at this campsite. Now, the authorities claim that they caught all of the men responsible, but who really knows? This was a period of 20 years that these crimes happened over. And there was a recorded 450 different sexual assaults on children. And those are just the assaults that the authorities actually know about. But disturbingly, we still don't know what these perpetrators look like, and the public doesn't even know their last name. That's because German privacy laws protect them. So this is Adrian V., one of the pedophile ring's ringleaders. But in every photo of these guys online, their faces are blurred or they're obscured. And like I said, their full identities have never been released. I don't know what the point of that is, but it's got to be one of the dumbest laws that I have ever read about. Oh yeah, and you ready to get angry? The two men at the top of this pedophile empire who had victimized 23 children over 450 times, a lot of those times on camera. They had destroyed 23 different childhoods. They were sentenced to 14 years in prison. Another one was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and another one was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So for that many assaults on camera, footage that's shared to the dark web to thousands of other pedophiles, for destroying the childhoods and lives of 23 children, which are going to be people, adults, the maximum sentence received was 14 years. This should upset you. This should offend you. And this is definitely concerning because just a day ago, Germany lowered the minimum time that you need to spend in prison, 1 year, to 6 months if they find CP or CSAM on any of your devices. So they just recently decided to punish pedophiles less severely. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast that I co-host with my wife, Courtney, Murder in America. It's available now on all streaming platforms.
I've worked with pedophiles for years. Do you know where they get their sexual images? The Wall Street Journal published a huge article on parent-managed minor accounts.
So this is one of the most disturbing rabbit holes I've gone down. I would definitely go check out that woman's TikTok who first brought this to my attention. But I want to explore this article that she's talking about. So what you see behind me are real comments left on the posts of child influencers. Basically, what a child influencer is a kid who's not old enough to sign up for Instagram or Facebook, so their own parents make them an account and manage it for them, which for some reason is legal. So in the article, they discuss how more suggestive content gets more comments and likes, and that pushes these parents or guardians to post more racy stuff, more racy images and videos of their own children. But how disturbing, they're making these racy posts and people are commenting, it's like a candy store or God bless Instamoms. And these parents even said that when they report predators to Instagram or Facebook, they're typically met with silence or indifference. But it seems like these parents are really trying to shift the blame. I'm just going to let you pause and read that. That's a description of a real photo that was posted on a child influencer account. And just look at these comments. These are real comments left by adults on a child's Instagram photo. But it doesn't end there. So the New York Times didn't actually want to show the photos that they're talking about. So they just described them. A 7-year-old girl faces the camera in athletic shorts and a top doing a standing split in front of a wall. I mean, just read these. These are all real photos posted on these accounts. And there are so many examples of these disturbing posts. These parents and guardians are posting these disturbing images of their own kids online for financial gain. Now, even more disturbingly, only accounts with more than 500 followers and multiple images of children in form-fitting or revealing attire were included in the analysis. I mean, just look at some of the posts that were on these accounts. Pause to read. And the authors of this article actually used software to determine which of these images were racy. Surprise, surprise, it was most of them. I mean, how disturbing is this? A girl in early adolescence opens a lace robe to reveal a string bikini with ruffles on top. She looks at the camera in heavy eyeshadow, making a kissy face. These are parents posting this of their own kids, knowing what they're going for. And these are some of the comments that are on that post. But even more disturbing is the fact that these parents or people that run these accounts actually offer exclusive subscriptions. So men, or rather anybody, can pay these parents for exclusive videos and photos of their children. Obviously, these photos aren't fully graphic, but they're oftentimes more racy and more suggestive than the ones they post publicly. Some of these parents even offer people online the chance to chat or speak with their child for money. And disturbingly, they also sell their children's used leotards, cheer outfits, and other undergarments and clothing. So obviously in these articles, they discuss how parents know that they're producing content that might get some people excited, mainly pedophiles. And they continue to post it. They continue to push to see how graphic or racy they can get. And all they care about is the money. They don't care about their child. They don't care about anything. I mean, truly, I would recommend you go read these 2 articles. It's one of the most disturbing kind of deep dives I've done in a while. And it's wild that absolutely nothing is being done about this problem. It's wild that this is legal. I mean, this should definitely be illegal. And yeah, this is haunting stuff. This is the most notorious priest in all of Australia, Bernard McGrath. And because people roast me for this, he is considered to be the notorious offender in the most notorious religious order in Australia. And yes, he's a pedophile, of course. Bernard was born in 1947 in Christchurch, New Zealand, and his father was a butcher who was previously involved with the church and wanted his son to live a life according to God and be involved with the church himself. So in 1968, Bernard took his vows, and in early 1969, he became a scholastic and worked in psychiatric wards. Keep in mind, he had taken a vow of chastity, but he reported that during his time here, he had a sexual relationship with another man, a fellow priest named Brother Berkmans Moynihan. So in 1974, he was transferred to the Maryland School in Christchurch. The prior at the school was Brother Roger Maloney. And apparently in his years at the school, Roger had fostered an environment of sexual abuse and terror. Roger Maloney would eventually be convicted of child sex abuse, but he allegedly forced Bernard to perform sex acts on him, just to keep his job. But even though written complaints were made about Roger and Bernard, nothing happened, and Roger was eventually transferred to the Vatican to work as a pharmacist. And after sexually abusing kids at this school, Bernard was transferred to another school for disadvantaged kids. By the way, this is a picture of Bernard and Roger, if you were wondering. So in 1981, Bernard became the headmaster of a school named Kendall Grange. And it was here where he had access to hundreds of disadvantaged boys who lived there on property. And he sexually abused a majority of these young boys. Parents made complaints that they heard that the headmaster was touching their children, but nothing was ever done about this. In 1992, however, Bernard was brought to a meeting with Father Brian Lucas. At the time, a lot of people had been reporting that priests and brothers had been touching children inside of churches, so Lucas was kind of the figurehead for the church's response, and he was trying to remediate all of these actions. And when Bernard met with him, he said that there would be a lot of allegations coming out against him, and so he was sent to a rehabilitation center in America. But then in 1993, legal troubles began for Bernard. All of his victims began to come forward, and he was imprisoned for a number of years. This would be his first of 5 different trials that he was involved with that lasted from 1993 all the way up to 2019. And in total, he would be sentenced to about 68 years in prison for over 100 counts of abuse against boys. Obviously, he abused hundreds of children, but these were just the accounts that they could prove. And some of these accounts of the abuse are absolutely horrific. I can't read them here on TikTok, but he did terrible, terrible things to these young children. So Bernard was a part of the St. John of God order, and there were a ton of different members of this order that were eventually convicted of child sex abuse. I mean, take a look here. These are just a few of the members that were convicted eventually as well. But one of the most shocking things about this case is the cover-up. So as far back as 1977, people were reporting that Bernard was touching children in these schools. And even though this was brought up to many people in powerful positions, they always transferred Bernard, attempted to silence parents and other people that were reporting this abuse. And yeah, they never reported him to police. Thank God, though, that now he's in prison, a real man of God.
This is by far the worst video to come out in 2024, and this is a massive trigger warning. The video that I'm about to explain was released extremely recently, and it comes out of the current civil war going on in Myanmar right now. It's pretty long, lasting 9 minutes and 58 seconds in length, and it was recorded in the middle of the night in a rural location in Myanmar. As you play the video, you see 4 captives sitting on the road, and all of them have their hands tied behind their backs, and they are all surrounded by rebels with a variety of weapons like knives, machetes, swords, and guns. A few seconds into the video, one of the captives who is sitting on the ground is being interrogated by a rebel who is carrying a makeshift machete, but despite this, it's insanely sharp. While he is interrogating the victim, he takes the machete and attempts to slice off the man's left ear, though you can't see it because the left side of his face isn't facing the camera. However, the man with the machete then begins to slice off the victim's right ear with the machete, which is able to be seen. The machete cuts through the ear very easily, and in a second, his ear is hanging off his head by a couple of strands of skin as blood leaks. The killer continues to ask questions, and you can tell the victim's voice changes. It sounds like he's trying to fight back tears. The man with the machete continues to question the victim and pokes the machete hard into the victim's face, and blood leaks more. The victim tries his best to answer the questions, but you hear him struggle to hold it together due to the fear of the situation and the pain he is in. The interrogator then begins to get angrier and angrier and raises his voice. He then pulls the victim's head down, which exposes the back of his neck, and he hits the area twice with the machete. Then, as the victim is hunched forwards with the back of his neck exposed, the man with the machete stands up and strikes the back of the victim's neck with the blade extremely hard. It almost totally decapitates him. The man's body then falls to the ground, and the only thing keeping his head on his body is the skin on the front of his neck. As the victim's body lays on the floor, blood begins to puddle. The second victim is then interrogated. He's on his knees with his hands tied behind his back. He's leaning forward, exposing the back of his neck as the killer with the machete holds the blade against him as he asks questions. The killer isn't patient at all with the second victim, and after a few seconds, he takes the machete and brings it down very hard in the back of the victim's neck. It cuts through the spinal cord, making a loud cracking sound, and it technically half decapitates the man, and he was instantly killed by the machete hit. The killer with the machete then strikes the corpse's arm 3 times below the shoulder, and the arm is almost completely severed as blood continues to stain the ground around. A couple of other rebels then enter the shot and begin stabbing the victim's corpse. They continue stabbing and hacking both of the victims' corpses, and one is even decapitated, and the head is held up to the camera. The final 2 victims are then interrogated as they are surrounded by rebels. And at this point, you see just how much rebels there are. There has to be at least 15. One of the final victims, who is a bald man, already had both of his ears severed and blood is dripping very bad. The man to his right then has both of his ears severed, but at this point, something really strange happens. The bald man, whose ears have been severed, then randomly begins to bleed a lot more. The dripping blood from his ears then turns to multiple streams of blood. Think of it like poking a hole in a water bottle and squeezing it. The man to his right then out of nowhere gets hit with the machete in the back of his neck and falls to the ground, and he is instantly killed by the blow. The corpse is then stabbed multiple times with a sword. The rebels then point knives and swords at the bald man as they mock him. They seem to be very interested in how he is bleeding. Streams of blood are spraying from both of his severed ears even after all of these minutes. And as the video ends, one of the men swings a sword into the side of the bald man's neck and it drops him, and the video then concludes. This video is just inhumane and brutal, and I don't recommend searching for it. It's by far the worst war crime caught on camera, and it's definitely the worst video to come out in 2024. And as we know, there has been plenty of awful videos. This video is horrific on every level, and the emotions and feeling it gives off is truly awful and just sad.
Sometimes true for stranger non-fiction. The case of Richard Trenton Chase is a story which even the most depraved horror writer would struggle to create. Over the course of 4 weeks spanning across 1977 and 1978, Richard Chase took the lives of 6 innocent victims in Sacramento, California. His murders gradually progressed in violence, beginning with drive-by shootings and culminated in
Shout out to
acts of
Sauce the
cannibalism.
Boss,
Okay, yeah,
of
our
course,
timelines
man.
are
Who's in
definitely
the
messed up.
building, man?
But I just learned that
Shout out
Oxford
to Sauce
University
the
in the
Boss,
UK is
of
actually
course,
older
man.
than
Who's
the
in the
Aztec
building,
Empire.
man?
So here's part 3. And before we dive in, I just want to thank everyone who listened because we are number 6 on the charts. So when Oxford was founded, they still thought the sun revolved around the earth. And they didn't know gravity was a thing for another 500 years. The last guillotining not only happened after Star Wars had already come out, but some of them were actually filmed. The last person to be executed by firing squad in the United States was executed the day Toy Story 3 came out. This one's crazy. William Shatner, James Dean, born in the same year. Harriet Tubman could have heard that the Titanic sank on the radio. And Shirley Temple could have had an Instagram account. And lastly, someone who witnessed Lincoln's assassination in person later went on to talk about it on a CBS game show.
Notorious BTK killer is a prime suspect in 2 unsolved murders. Dennis Rader, the convicted BTK killer, is back in the headlines after officers have been digging up his former backyard. The 1976 missing persons case of Cynthia Kinney from Oklahoma has sparked the search. The investigation has apparently uncovered possible connections to other missing people and unsolved murders. These have taken place in Kansas and Missouri, and police believe they are potentially linked to Dennis. The FBI are now looking at matching up pieces of evidence that they have with pieces of clothing that are in Polaroids that Dennis took. They may be able to then see if the pieces of evidence match the DNA of the victims. They are looking in particular at a distinctive red blanket, which was in a Polaroid that Dennis took. They believe that this may belong to Shauna Garber. Shauna was actually 22 when she was hard and killed in 1990. Her body was recently identified in 2021, hence the advancements in this case.
This has a much creepier history than I thought.
Sauce the boss in the building. Sauce the boss in the building.
Sauce the boss, yo, sauce the boss, of course. Send sauce. Sauce the boss, yo, sauce the boss, of course.
About you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only. Shout out to King Sauce Boss in the building. About you, and
shout out to Sauce the boss, of course, man. Who's in the building, man? Shout out to Sauce the boss, of course, man. Who's in the building, man? Shout out to Sauce the boss, of course, man.